Alright, so what you're looking at here is the lightest and smallest DJI O3 Cinewhoop. Custom built, of course. This is not available in the bind and fly anywhere. And of course, yes, I said it, this is the world's smallest and lightest DJI O3 Cinewhoop. That's probably going to trigger a bunch of people. Go ahead and leave your comments down below. Would love to hear what you got to say about that. And if you've seen something lighter and smaller than this, let me know about it. Instead of just saying that what you're looking at here is not the lightest and smallest, because unless I see evidence otherwise, I'm going to make that claim. Now, what you're seeing here actually could be even lighter than it is. I probably could make some different moves in terms of parts on here. I would not recommend that anyone build this. It is not particularly super difficult if you're good at soldering small stuff. You don't mind dealing with working with tiny parts and soldering tiny parts. It's actually not that difficult in terms of putting it together. I think for me it was sort of figuring out how to put the parts together so that you don't get jello in the camera, and I'm pretty sure that I figured that out, and I'm going to explain how that was accomplished. Obviously, you can take this UV filter off and save like almost a gram, so it'd be like 34 grams. This is 35 grams, what you're seeing here with the UV filter on there. But I'd rather not scratch the lens of this $100 camera and just scratch the UV filter instead, and and have it be an extra 1 gram. That's probably a good trade-off in my opinion. So this isn't going to be a full build tutorial because I feel like I need to leave out a full build tutorial because it might get someone who shouldn't be building this to try and build this and then get mad at me later, and I would rather that not happen. So I think that if you have the skill set, you should be able to build this if you wanted to, based on the information I'm providing in this video. So, you already have the soldering skills, you've already built little tiny whoops like this before, you're familiar with stripping on the O3 air unit, etc., then just watching this video and getting the information that you're going to get from me talking about it should be enough for you to figure out how to put this together without a full build tutorial designed for a novice, because I actually don't want novices to build this because I think it's just a waste of their time. And this is kind of, I don't know, not really something that is necessary. I think that something with a 40mm propeller or even a 45mm propeller is going to be more than adequate for hitting tiny gaps. This is, for people that just want to hit the tiniest of gaps possible. You just give up too much. There's just too many compromises to get down to this size and weight, and we'll just talk about that in this video. So I am running this on a 2S setup. It's these two batteries here, and I took all the stickers and everything off to get the weight down as low as possible. And you can see we're running BT 2.0 connectors on this one, and you're like, well, what battery is that? Well, it's this one here. This is the Tattoo 300 milliamp hour high volt with the BT 2.0 connector. And if you're not familiar, this is I guess they're calling this the folded type of LiPo versus the rolled. These are supposedly better. I believe Tattoo makes these, and Newbie Drone also. Their nitro injector batteries are similar, if not made from the same factory. I believe that this black cover is the same. So they get it from the same place. But the Newbie Drone batteries are PH 2.0 connectors, which don't perform as well. You need the BT 2.0 connectors. And so, yeah, I'm running 2S on this because the O3 air unit does not run on 1S. And I have basically this setup, running two 1S batteries in a 2S setup by putting my little BT 2.0 connectors like this. The one's upside down compared to the other one, and the reason is to get this as close together as possible with as minimum a number of wires as possible. I have basically, to get 2S, you run a positive to the negative here, and then this positive goes back over here, and the negative goes back over here. So this is how I set this up to have the least amount of weight for the battery connector, and this is the minimum length here, so I can run it out the side. And the batteries do sit in this little tray right here. They sit vertically inside the tray like this, so that's how I get the least amount of obstruction for the props. Of course, I am running this in a pusher setup. This is the superior way to do it. Yes, that's my opinion. Sorry if you disagree. This is the Meteor 65 Pro frame, and I'm running the 35mm gem band props on this one. Of course, you know, this is almost the same size as the regular Meteor 65 frame. It's a little bit, maybe a few millimeters bigger, but you get way more efficiency on the 35mm propeller. So this is why I went with this one. But the downside of going with this bigger frame for the bigger propeller is that the flight controller selection is very limited. So the only one that I can get to fit in here is the Happy model, the Cross F4, and that one fits in this frame. It's nothing else I could find will fit in this frame that can do 2S. So if you know of a flight controller that does 2S, that has built-in Express LRS, and can do you know, 2S it'll fit in this frame, let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear about that. I could not find anything else. This was the only one that would fit that would do 2S. So yeah, and of course the USB port comes out the bottom because the O3 air unit is blocking the other side. But it doesn't matter when you're flying because the batteries are in here. And so these little TP ports fold down, the battery goes in, and so the USB port is not touching the ground when you're taking off. The batteries are, so don't freak out about that. I haven't had any problems with that yet. So the whole trick to this thing in terms of getting it together and getting the weight down is obviously stripping everything possible out of the O3 air unit. I took the SD card out, I took all of the RF shielding out. I got this down to about 15.2 grams, I believe. That's not including the UV filter, but including the Flywoo, this camera adapter that comes in their kit. I didn't use the rest of the parts because that adds another 1.5 grams about, and so I wanted to keep the weight down, obviously to improve flight time. And so I stripped down everything, and I mounted the O3 air unit to basically the rest of the quad here with dental floss, which is, you know, it's strong and weighs almost nothing. And the whole trick to this is not so that you don't get jellos, because the jello comes through the motors vibrating, the props vibrating. You see, this is a very flexy frame, right? So let me just show you from this side here. Super flexy frame. See how this all moves around? But none of the frame is touching the O3 air unit or the camera. Surprisingly, it's gonna be hard to show in camera. This was super hard to figure out in terms of creating this 3D printed part over here to get this to work. I think I went through about 20 different iterations of that mount. But the trick, and this is the thing, is is to mount this not to the quad or to the frame itself where the motors are vibrating. So I have this mounted to the flight controller. So it's actually, I have it covered up underneath this piece of foam here. Let's pull this out. So there's the Cross F4 there. There's the dental floss the other side. So the O3 air unit is actually attached to the flight controller, which is dampened with these rubber dampeners here in the corners. So that absorbs a lot of the vibrations. And then on top of that, there's a piece of foam that goes, that's in between the flight controller and the bottom of the O3 air unit. And that was really hard to find, and I don't know where you can get that. I tried a variety of different foam. I just happened to find something that worked. It's this sort of texture. It's very squishy. I mean, it's very easy. It's not very dense. So this one worked to prevent any vibrations getting to the camera. This foam. I don't know what it's called. If you guys know what it is, let me know in the comments below. I'm very curious what you would call this, but this is some kind of packing foam. It came with something that I bought, FPV related. This stuff comes in a lot of stuff. It's pretty common. It's not hard to find. It's just that I'm not sure where to buy it. It just comes in with packaging. I tried some other types of foam. Like this is a more dense foam here. Looks like this. Also comes with a lot of packaging. This did not work. When I tried this method here, too much vibrations came through and I got a lot of jello. So it really depends on the kind of foam you use and also how much you tighten down the O3 air unit onto the flight controller and the foam, and you don't want it too tight, of course. This is actually pretty, it moves around a fair amount, as you can see here. So that I found sort of the sweet spot. I had to like tie this around maybe like 10 times, fly it like 10 times, and then I finally found the tension, the right amount of, you know, you want to squish it down a certain amount, but not too much. And I found the exact amount that seemed to work. It was trial and error, very difficult. So again, I don't recommend you build this unless you just want like a, you know, a lot. You just like to subject yourself to a lot of pain. You know, go for it. But I'm just showing you this because this is more like it was more like a challenge to me. I'm like, okay, I wanted to make something as super light as possible that has the O3 air unit. You know, it doesn't get great flight time. It's like on these two 300 milliamp hour 1S, you get 2.5 minutes, but it recovers back to 3.7 volts if I fly for 2.5 minutes. You can go lower in voltage. If you set a lower voltage limit in the flight controller, you can go lower. I'm not sure how well these batteries will hold up. It might damage them. You could probably go down to 3.5 volts, 3.3 volts, and get maybe 3 minutes of flight time on this one. So again, not super practical in terms of like, you know, a quad that you want to build and get lots of flight time. This is more sort of a, oh, I have a quad that does this. You know, it's kind of surprising, but yeah, it works, but it's not super easy to do. So again, as I said, the trick is to mounting the O3 air unit to that foam that goes to the flight controller, and this is not touching the whip part of the frame, whip frame at all, anywhere, and that's where all the vibrations are. And then I made this TPU mount here, and this is attached to the O3 air unit, and that's what the camera is attached to. And then I make sure that the camera cable, which is the smaller, shorter 60 millimeter cable, does not touch the frame either. And then on top of all of that, this this little white rubber piece here is actually, these are flight controller grommets. So these are the same grommets that are down here. These are colored black. So they're for flight controllers, and so those will absorb even any additional vibrations that happen to come through. And you can see here, I have the screw going through the grommet there, and then that goes through the camera mount that holds the camera on. So yeah, it's a pretty complicated setup. Took a lot of trial and error to sort of figure this out, get this to work right, and take out any jello. But remarkably, it works, and there's no jello. Pretty happy with the end results. Obviously, flight time isn't going to be great on this one because it's just too, it's just too small. You need a bigger prop. Now, the motors on here, these are the Flywoo 08 02.4 16,500 kV, and I did put a motor limit in this one because it's a little bit too high. And this motor, I believe, is no longer being made. I believe it's discontinued. So you're probably gonna have to go search for some other motors. Like I happen to have some other ones here. Let's see here. I have probably this one here. This is the Happy Model 0802. This is a 16,000 kV. This is probably the best one to go for. That's still being made. I'll put a link down in the video description for this one. But yeah, I did search around. I just happen to have some of these lying around, these Flywoo motors, and that's why I was like, oh, it has to be 2S, and there's not a lot of 2S 0802 motors that'll work on a 35 millimeter propeller. They're pretty hard to find. So another reason to stay away from this whole build here, because it's just super annoying to find the parts and everything as well. Oh, and by the way, if I hadn't noticed, I cut away one of these little spires here. It's right there, it goes in here, and that gets in the way of the camera. So I had to cut that away. And then another thing is, because this frame here is actually meant for a standard setup where the prop is not a pusher setup, it's the other way around. The prop tends to sit more towards the lower part, or this bottom part of the whoop cart here, and so it's angled up. So if you have the prop up too far, it's gonna rub against the frame. So I actually have these with a little bit of space there between the prop and the motor bell so that it's not scratching the frame, which is not good. So another part of the build in case you're wondering, but I think that should cover pretty much everything. Oh yeah, and then the antennas, I forgot about that. So I'm using these short antennas without no heat shrink, I think it's called a balloon. That's missing as well. You don't need that, it'll still work. I'm not flying 30 kilometers away. I don't really care about, range or anything like that. How far away you're going to be able to fly in 2.5 minutes? Not very far. So this is going to be fine for indoor. Now, actually, I probably will I'll switch these out for something a little bit thinner and lighter and something I'll bend a little bit better. So I'm trying to bend these up. I have to bend these up so that they don't touch the frame. So that's pretty annoying. I'm going to have to swap that out. I'll probably build another one actually of these because I've like I said, I got those Happy Model motors. I've got some other motors I want to try out. Maybe I'll even try this out with the 07, 02 motors and see how that goes. As you can see here, I'm using the peak screws here. That also saves weight, only using 2 of them. So yeah, this is very bare minimum. I'm sure someone will try and attempt to build this lighter. Like I said, you could do away with the UV filter, maybe go with some 07, 02 motors, maybe go with some dual blade props instead of a tri-blade prop. Although I don't think there's a 35mm bi-blade of this from GemFan or anywhere actually. So I'm not sure that'll help you because I don't think that exists. Not really sure what else I could pull off of here. I was thinking maybe there's a way you can pull off, this is what the RF shielding was attached to, this metal that goes around here, because that's just extra weight as well. But I couldn't figure out a way to get that off safely without damaging the circuit board. If you happen to know of a way to do that, let me know. But yeah, I think this is gonna be it in terms of you can probably scrape off a gram or 2 perhaps at most. Not sure where else you can save some weight on this one. So if you have any ideas or if you've seen something lighter, I'm sure someone out there is going to leave a comment saying that they found one that weighed 20 grams with the O3 air unit. That'd be interesting because the O3 air unit stripped down like this was 15 grams. So yeah, if there's a one out there that's 20 grams, that's 5 grams more than this with, that accounts for the frame, the motors, and the flight controller. By all means, let me know where that is. Anyway, I'll link everything down in the video description. If you happen to are really super desperate to build this, I will make the TPU parts that I designed here available for purchase. You have to contact me to get those. I am not going to put STLs out there because I actually don't want anyone to build this because it's freaking hard, and I don't want, basically I already know that I'm going to get a billion questions as it is, and that from people that shouldn't be building this. Anyway, I think that'll cover for this video. Got any questions, let me know. Talk to you guys in the next one.